purchased it. And it was almost as if we said, hey, everybody, except for 2 people, you're off. And the reason is because there was this whole chunk of time where all the work we were doing was behind the scenes. You know, it didn't require the community. Hopefully you got a break from that. But now we are transitioning back in to a season where it's going to be all hands on deck. And can I just be as frank as possible with you? We will not get this done unless we get it all hands on deck. And that's a lot of things. That's like everything from like swinging a hammer and, doing those kinds of things construction-wise to like inviting people to fill the space. The whole reason we're doing this building in the first place is because we believe that God has more for this city and more for the people of Durango. We are making room for a whole bunch of people to come and experience the love of God. And so we don't have our permits in hand yet, but I believe within the next few days we will. We've had all of the meetings. We are right on the cusp. And so what I wanted to say with that is as we approach this season, an all-in season, you need to be in the know. And we're not going to talk about it every week at church. The reason why is because we're here to do ministry, not buildings, all right? But that means we have a lot to communicate. And so now I'm going to go to the welcome, text welcome. If you want to stay in the know, you need to text building to this number. When we get that permit in hand, I will be texting this number. If you're not on that number, you will not know, all right? Also, if you text welcome, this is the last thing, I'm going to also do this. So if you text welcome, this is the way you get on our email list. This is the best way we have to communicate. Sorry if you don't have email and you only have TikTok, all right? So far, email is the best way to communicate. So with that, the last thing I want to say is we are in a season where we are making our year-end push to close out our budget on track. And I just want to be really honest with you. We are behind budget for the year. And so if you would consider a year-end donation to help us catch up in our budget, we would greatly appreciate that. Giving is not a requirement of being a part of a church, but I will say the most tangible effect you can have on a church in a sort of background sense is by giving proportionally. And this is what the scriptures teach us to do. We give proportional to our income. And if everybody does their part, some have more, some have less, it equals out to a community that is able to supply for the needs of the community. So I hope you'll consider doing that. Let me welcome Brian up for the sermon.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, slow clap would be great next time if you would. Start slow. Oh gosh, my friends, hey, thanks for being here. It is a joy for me to bring you just a word from the Lord tonight. We are in, like it's been mentioned a couple times, we are in our third week of Advent. And if you haven't been with us, let me just catch you up a little bit. So Advent is really just the Christmas season in the church calendar where we begin to celebrate the coming of Christ in the future and also the coming of Christ in the past, right? We get to Christmas Day, which is next Wednesday? Is Christmas Eve? No, next Thursday. It's like a week, yeah. We get to celebrate the first coming of Jesus at Christmas, but also we're in this moment where we are stuck in between the first coming of Jesus, which was 2,000 years ago when he planted his church and inaugurated this new kingdom idea and said, I am coming back. I will return to actually bring the culmination of the kingdom that I am inaugurating now. And so Advent is this funny moment where we are both celebrating what has happened, Jesus' birth in Bethlehem 2,000 years ago, and what that means for us today. And we are celebrating in hope the second coming, the second Advent. Actually, the word that's used in the Greek is parousia, which means presence, We are celebrating not only the presence of God, the presence of Jesus with us now, but also the very real, tangible presence of Jesus at his second coming. And so that's what Advent is. And really, all throughout this last season of teaching through Advent and getting excited and hopeful and ready to celebrate the birth of Christ next week, the question we've been wrestling with is, if we are standing in a moment in time between Jesus' first coming and his second coming, what do we do while we wait for that? What do we do while we wait for the second coming of Christ? Right? He inaugurated his kingdom and invited us into this new way of life, this new way of living, invited us into forgiveness of sins and salvation and rebirth, right? Soul regeneration. And because of that, now we have what we have, and we get to decide, what do we do now as we wait the coming king? And so we've been going through that the last 3 weeks. The first week we did hope. What does it mean to be a people of hope? And these are all invitations of God. What it means to be a Christian is to be a person of hope. Last week, DJ taught on peace, which is what was Christ doing when he was the Prince of Peace and brought a kingdom of peace and didn't bring a sword, right, but brought a cross. What does that mean for us? And tonight we're going to talk about joy. Talk about joy. And I'll just say, for somebody who I don't know if there are naturally joyful people in here. There's a lot of you that are just like smiles plastered on your faces. Like, it's like the world just can't get you down. You're just like, you wake up. We have the people in here, those like true psychos that wake up happy every morning. Is there any of those out there? Oh, Jeff, you're one of them. All right, great. Okay. I didn't get as many laughs as I was hoping it would have. Okay. I am not one of those people that wakes up happy in the morning. Nor am I somebody that, honestly, I'll just say, full disclosure and vulnerability, I have had to fight for joy in my life. Joy isn't something that comes really naturally to me. I tend to be a bit more melancholy. I tend to see more of the problems in the world than the good parts. That's just part of my personality. And so joy, really, personally for me, has been a lifelong struggle of trying to find where does joy come from? What is joy? And really tonight we're going to look at what is a biblical invitation of joy. And I recognize that, and this is what I tend to do when I think of things like this, is there's a lot of ways that we as people, and as Christians especially, can experience joy, right? There's a lot of different ways that we can live in joy, right? Like aligning with God's purposes, right? Like when we do the things of God, when we live the way that we are built, we experience joy, right? When we don't go against the way that God has built us for relationship and for purpose and for work and things like that, when we live in those rhythms, we experience joy. Sometimes even in the invitation of suffering, we can experience joy, right? There is joy to be found just in living in the way that God has called us to live. A lot of us experience joy just like living in our bodies, right? A lot of us love to ski and to hike and to walk our dog and to rock climb, and that's part of some of like the Colorado Durango DNA, right? I love to go out and breathe hard, right? That's what I always say. Like, Lisa's like, where are you headed? I'm like, I don't know. I just got to go breathe hard. I got to go do something, right? I got to go run. I got to go use my body. And really, God has built humans to have bodies that love and to experience endorphins and be outside. Maybe it's experiencing beauty. Maybe it's, you go hike into Engineer Meadow in June when the flowers are blooming. And experiencing beauty is a part of experiencing God's joy, of saying, God, what you have made for us to experience. Maybe it's out in the desert, out in Moab or in Mexican Hat on the river. Or, right? Maybe like beauty has all, I used to think West Texas was really ugly. That's where my wife's from. And actually through the last probably 15 to 20 years, like I have come to like love it out there. The sky is huge. It's flat. But like there's this beauty, this unique beauty of West Texas or southern New Mexico that it's not as like striking and dynamic as Durango or the mountains, but it has its own really incredible beauty. And I feel like I experience the joy of God out there. Maybe it's when you do relationships well, right? When we've learned how to forgive, when we've learned how to restore things. when we just do relationships in a way where there is just not as much conflict as maybe there can be at times. When you go, man, like this is so fun to do this together. And those are all really beautiful, and I would say biblical ways that we experience joy. But there's this other kind of joy that I think the scriptures speak to, and it is a bit less concrete. It's more of like the base note of where joy comes from, I think, or at least one of them. It's been something personally that I've experienced. The scriptures speak to joy. The Greek word is chara, and the definition would be something like this. It's chara, joy, the biblical God joy that we are designed to live with is this deep-seated elation, enjoyment, and satisfaction stemming from God's work. All right, so it's not just this benign, just like happiness. It's actually this deep, I mean, you guys know the difference, right? If I were to say there's like moments of happiness and then there's moments of joy, right? It's like joy as this like base note. It's like this thing that's fought for. It's like this rich experience that it's not just this fleeting sense of like just the emotion. It's like, oh, there's this fullness of joy that I experienced at Thanksgiving when I went around Texas and I didn't open my computer for 11 days and I saw like 50 of my friends and squeezed all of their kids. And I came home and I was so tired, but I was so full of joy. All right, that is different than happiness or some other shorter-sighted version or emotion. And so even Paul speaks about this type of joy in Galatians 5. Listen to this. Joy is actually a fruit of the Spirit of God. Galatians 5, verse 22, it says, but the fruit of the Spirit, 3 of these are ones we've talked about in Advent, is love, joy, peace, forbearance or forgiveness, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. All right, so even a real deep, like the joy that God wants you to experience is not from the world. It is from God. It flows from like the river of God's work, the river of God's heart, from the Spirit's presence, his parousia with you. So this is something different. And I'm going to argue this tonight. This is what I think the scriptures speak to. Is I think one way that we see this biblically is that joy is rooted in the truth of abundance. Joy, biblical joy, is like a shift in your worldview into the reality that God has no limit. That there is no limit on the things that you are in search for. That joy is inextricably connected to abundance. So, why do I bring this up? I'm going to get to the bad news first, right? So when we feel like love is scarce, right? And so I would say like maybe even the opposite of this would be scarcity or fear. So there's joy, and then there's scarcity. Or there's abundance, and then there's scarcity. So I would say when we, just as people, just an honest diagnosis of all of us here, when we feel like love is scarce, in relationship, right? With your spouse, with a parent, with a kid, with a whatever. When you feel like love is scarce, we make our life out of proving that we are worthy for love, right? When you feel like there's only so much love to go around, then we live in this like anxious way of living because we feel like if there's only so much to go around, then I got to prove that I'm actually worthy of that love. Music just came on. Awesome. All right. That was kind of vibey for a sec. Maybe should we just leave it on? Right? Like I work with professional athletes, right? And I would just say as like a blanket statement, and I would say this, like I talk about this all the time with them. It's that there is something about athletes many times, high-performing people, that underneath all of their life, at the very bottom, the reason they compete is to like be told that they have value. Right? To justify their existence. which means there is a wound there of some kind. There's like a wound of like love that they did not receive. Like somebody did not put their hand on them enough and say, son, daughter, like I love you and it doesn't matter what you do, where you go, what you say to me. Like there is no limit on the love that I have for you and your value. But when we live in a place of scarcity of love, we try to prove our self-worth. Do you see what I'm getting at? I'm going to the very bottom of where joy comes from, right? We're going all the way down, right? That's ultimately is self-righteousness. When we feel like money or resource is scarce, right? If you feel like provision in your life is scarce, money, maybe namely, we never really live in the freedom or the generosity of money because we're so afraid there's never going to be enough, right? Some of the most wealthy people in the world have been asked, I forget who it was, I think it was Rockefeller, said, hey, when are you just going to stop trying to make money? And he said, after one more dollar, right? Like there is never enough money when you live in a posture of scarcity, of things are limited. But when you live in a posture of, man, God has got things. He has got wells and safes of money and provision that I've never even known of or could ever even dream of, and God ultimately has this. That brings you into a place of freedom, amen? Right? It unlocks something in you when you don't live in a place of scarcity. And this is what the scriptures teach about throughout all of the scriptural narrative, right? I would say all of Jewish consciousness in the Old Testament, there is this understanding that there is always enough. Actually, the problem usually is that we don't steward things well. He's like, that's the prophetic word to Israel over and over and over is you're forgetting the orphans, you're forgetting the poor people, right? Wealth is at the top and these people are living in slums. It's not that there's not enough, it's that it's not distributed well. There's always enough. That's why you can cut off a part of your farmland and always save it for somebody else. Or let the refugees pick from the outer edges of your field because you will always have enough when you steward things well. That is the baseline assumption within all of Jewish consciousness, which then bled into, right, the Jesus life and what Jesus invited us into. So I'll stop banging that drum, but all of these things ultimately are rooted in fear. They're rooted in fear. Like there's not going to be enough. We don't have enough time. There's not enough love for me out there. I got to work harder. I got to do more. And so there's something about joy that is connected to this. And I'm actually going to one of my favorite passages in the scriptures. It's Luke 15, and it's about two sons. This story you've heard probably many times. It's one of the most famous scriptures, one of the most famous parables that Jesus told. But he is trying to, in this parable, he is trying to help us shift our worldview. He's not trying to get us to do anything. He's not just like, hey, just go do X, Y, or Z, like some of these other smaller versions of joy. He is trying to get us to completely shift and change how we see the world. He's trying to get us to change and augment the reality that we live in. He's saying, I have a truth for you today that I need you to realize and to recognize. And so he tells this story of these two sons. And he tells the story of this father who has this massive estate. Basically all the money that anybody could ever have, all the resources, all the provisions, right? He tells the story of this rich father, this rich household, and there's two sons. And there's a younger son and there's an older son. I love the family dynamic, right? Because there's always interesting things, right, between firstborn and lastborn or middle childs, right? You see this happening in this parable. But he tells this story about these two boys, and he says, okay, so there's this younger son, and he had been living in the father's household, had everything that he could ever need. And one day he went to the father and he said, you know what? I'm done with you. I'm done with this whole thing that you're doing. I want my inheritance now, and I'm out of here. I want to live on my own. I want to make my own decisions. So essentially tells his father, you're dead to me. Give me the will that they would receive upon his death. I want it now. And scriptures say that the father granted it. He was like, you've got free will, my friend. Here you go. Here's your inheritance. And it says that he went to a distant country, the younger son did, and he squandered it, the scriptures say, on reckless living. There's an older son as well, who is the older son that stayed home, right? So you have the younger son who did the reckless thing, basically told his parents and his father that he wanted him dead and that he wanted to take his inheritance now. He didn't want anything to do with the family, so he excommunicated himself. Goes and spends it on reckless living. And then there's the son who stayed home. Oh, that son, we love that son, right? He's the son that he was the good boy. he made the right decisions, right? He was the hard worker. He was the one that stood by dad's side. And yet, even the older son had a worldview problem. And so this is where we pick up. The younger son went off to a distant country, and he squandered basically all of his inheritance on reckless living, it says. And so in verse 17, Luke 15, verse 17, this is what it says. It says, the younger son, when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? Right, so this kid bet it all, right? He went to Vegas and he went all in and has nothing. He says, you know what? Okay, this is the internal dialogue. He's like, all right, I will set out and I'll go back to my father and I'll say to him, Father, I've sinned against you. I've sinned against heaven. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me one of your hired servants. And so he got up and he went back to his father. So you see how this is setting up. The younger son believed, there is a limit on my father's love. The younger son believed that I can actually lose my inheritance. I can lose my sonship. That I ultimately am the culmination of my behavior. I am my decisions and I am what I do. He had this misconception. Right? There is not enough love for me in the world. And so he went back expecting judgment. He went back expecting scarcity, right? And that this is what happens. Verse 21, it says this about his father. It says, but while he was a long way off, it's like his father was standing on the porch going, gosh, when is this guy going to come back? His father saw him and was filled with compassion. And he ran to his son. He threw his arms around him and he kissed him. And the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe, put it on him, put a ring on his finger and a sandal on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. Right? The younger son believed that his bad deeds was separating him from his father. The lie is scarcity. And look how his father responded. In abundance. So you have the younger son, and then the older son, verse 25. This is what it says. It says, meanwhile, the older son was in the field. Right? He's out in the field when the younger son comes back. It says, when he came near the house, he could hear music and dancing. And so he called one of his servants and he asked, what's going on here? Your brother's come home, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because of him, because he is back safe and sound. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. And so the father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you. I've never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came home who squandered your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him? One of the best lines in Scripture right here. My son, the father said, you have always been with me, and everything I have is yours. You have always been with me, and everything I have is yours. You see, the younger son didn't ultimately believe in the love of the Father. He didn't believe in the abundance. He thought love, reconciliation, he thought all those things were limited based on his actions. He didn't believe in the abundance, the goodness of God in his life, right? The Father represents God. The older son didn't recognize what he had all along. All along. Right? He's living at home, doing the thing, being a good boy. And all along, he didn't recognize that everything, that not only did he have the presence of his father, did he have the presence and closeness and nearness of being in the Father's household, but he says to his son, everything, you've always been with me, and everything I have is yours. I really believe, my friends, that this is a worldview shift that God is inviting us into. That some of the most joyful people that I know have the least. You know why that is? It's because they know I've got the Lord, and there is no limit on the provision. There is no limit on the resource. That I am not in lack. I am not in want. Right? I have been with people who live with dirt floors and no possessions, and they are some of the happiest people because they believe, man, the Father has always been with me, and everything that I have is his, and everything he has is mine. Right? They are not limited by a worldview of scarcity. And I would say, and I know that this is a bit meta, this is a bit heady, but I would say, my friends, in practice, this is like one of the most powerful realities of the Scripture that God is inviting you to believe into today. That he is trying to completely rearrange and augment your sense of where things come from. That there is no limitation on the love that God has for you. There is no limitation on the purposes and the hope that you have to believe in. Right? So much so, my friends, that in Hebrews 12, I was going to reference this later, but I'm going to do it now. It says this. It says that, here, throw that up there, Suzanne. This is what the writer of Hebrews says about Jesus. It says, and let us run with perseverance, my friends, Christians, the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. Now listen to this. For the joy set before him. This is heinous. The joy set before him. He endured the cross. He scorned its shame, and he sat down at the right hand of God. Are you catching this? Jesus living in his purpose, living in the hope of what is to come, living in the abundance of the things that will be accomplished through the cross. It says he went to scorn that thing's shame and to suffer, and he did it in what? Joy. If that doesn't blow your mind, I don't know what does. Right? Like it's one of those moments where you're like, I don't know how anybody accomplishes that. I actually hate suffering. It's the worst thing ever. I want it to die and go away. Right? And God actually says, my friends, there is something that I'm trying to accomplish in your suffering. Right? I didn't cause it, but you know what? You bet I will use it to achieve my purposes. You know why? Because I'm a God of abundance. I'm not a God of scarcity. I don't live by your rules, and I live by a completely different worldview than yours. My thoughts are not your thoughts, and my ways are not your ways. And so what I'm trying to get you to do is to step into the way that I see the world. The people that really understand this are the people, in my opinion, that live the most freely. They live the most joyfully. They live with the least amount of shame. They screw up and they're not like, oh, I'm a sinner, I'm a dirty, rotten sinner. They screw up and they're like, oh, I blew it, dude. That was horrible. But man, does God love me. man, there's nothing I can do. Like the dude is he's reckless. He's relentless in his chase of me. Like I can't alter, he is just coming after me over and over and over, right? The people that have experienced the abundance of God's love are the ones that are completely transformed by it. They can't shut up about it. When they fall down and they have issues, they're like, man, God has got me, right? When you're about to get shorted on your paycheck, you know what? The Lord's going to take care of me. He's going to get me through this. And that is not false happiness, my friends. That is not like taking the Prozac pill and just trying to be happy. That is a completely augmented, shifted change of what is true in reality, right? It is a shift of worldview. It's a shift of worldview. And all throughout the scriptures, God is saying, we got more than enough for you here. We got more than enough at the table. We got a lot of rooms. Got a lot. The psalmist at one point, I forget what psalm, maybe 65, 66. It says that the psalm is about talking about going into a store and buying things with no money. My friend actually wrote a song about it. He called it "The Cupboard's Full." He's like, yo, you without money, you without anything, you without pedigree, right? Poor, pitiful, blind, and naked, come, eat, buy, purchase things for free. The cupboards are full. And so I'm going to leave you with these 3 questions. And then we're going to respond and sing a song. It's this. These are just 3 diagnostic questions about joy. Do I live into the truth of this abundance day to day? Like, do I operate as the younger or older son? Where do I just need to be told and reminded, you've always been with me, and everything I have is yours? Do I live into this? Second is this: would my close friends say that I'm a person of joy? Just no shame here. Just a diagnostic question. Like, do the people that know you, like, would they say, like, you're that chick, that guy, joy? Man, they are joyful. They live in a state not of false positivity, right? But man, they just live with real joy. Like they I don't know what it is, but they come out just ready to like love people. Like they're impassioned by something. Are you a person of joy? Would your friends say that? Would your spouse say that? Would your kids say that? And then third is this: where in area of my life do I live in scarcity? And we all have something. I'll just say, many of us have many, right? So this isn't like if, it's where is it? Where's it at? Like, where's the hurt, you know? Where do I live in scarcity? It can be all sorts of things in our life. But let me just tell you, my friends, that there is something there for you. That God is trying to free you, to remind you, to invite you into a trust with him that maybe you've never experienced. He's like, that thing right there. There's so much more. There's so much more. We're just going to sing a song in response to